So as we move to the deepening portion of our service today, Reverend Brian is going to pick up on his theme of 7 lively virtues, juxtaposing lust and love in just a little bit. My reflection is going to take a look at how passion fits somewhere in that equation. Amiri Baraka was an American writer. He wrote poetry, drama, fiction, essays, music criticism. The thread of black nationalism and white racism is continually present in his work. He was complicated, he was prejudiced, and he was passionate. I was introduced to him in college English course at the University of Wisconsin in the mid-1980s. The poem was 3 Modes of History and Culture. It has 7 stanzas, the last of which I wrote down at the time on a note card, and I have carried that note card with me for the next 4 decades. In the first 6 stanzas of the poem, he recounts with rage and power the journey of black Americans in the 19th and 20th century from the South to Chicago, the journey from Reconstruction into entrenched Jim Crow. Now, I'm not Baraka, and I've never seen him read this poem, but I'm going to ask you for a favor. If you can close your eyes for a minute and see if you can just hear his words, here are a couple of those earlier stanzas. Songs knocking inside old women's faces, knocking through cardboard trunks, trains leaning north, catching hellfire in windows, passing through the first ignoble cities of Missouri to Illinois and the panting Chicago. And then always we go where flesh is cheap, where factories sit open burning the chiefs. Make your way up through fog and history. Brick songs, shoe songs, chants of open weariness. The party of insane hope. I've come from there too, where the dead told lies about clever social justice. Burning coffins voted and staggered through cold white streets, listening to Wilkie or Wallace or Dewey through the dead face of Lincoln. Come from there and belched it out. Belched it out. You can feel the heat, the driving intensity coming through in his prose. He is seething. And then in the poem, immediately, no pause, no transition, this final stanza, the one that I wrote on the note card. I think about a time when I will be relaxed, when flames and non-specific passion wear themselves away, and my eyes and hands and mind can turn and soften, and my songs will be softer and lightly weight the air. Okay, you can open your eyes. So in this poem, he is driven, he is relentless, he's passionate, and he's exhausted. He dreams of flames, and I just adore this phrase, non-specific passion wearing themselves away. Why? Well, he says it. It's a kind of personal inner peace that he is looking for. So passion is amazing. It's catalytic, it's motivating, it's driving. It makes it so much easier for me to get off the sofa and do something, to get going. That's important with the hard stuff in life. 3 parts passion, 1 part caffeine, let's go. But unbalanced, heated passion, non-specific passion can also be completely consuming. It can ultimately be completely self-centered and thoroughly exhausting. Baraka's dreaming of a future with justice achieved and being done with the fight in the world, inside himself. Originally, I assumed he meant a future far off in the distance. In college, writing pretty much every day for a daily progressive student newspaper where we continually stayed up late into the morning arguing wording for the next day's editorials, railing against Ronald Reagan and his policies on, you can name the issue, Nicaragua, environment, whatever. Baraka's wish for some peace at times resonated. Fight, wear yourself out, exhaustion is a badge of honor, dream of righteous peacefulness later. You know, college. It's a bit self-absorbed, but it's also pretty cool. In those intervening 4 decades, what was important enough for me to write down and to still save on that card, it resonates with me, but I'm coming more to think of Baraka's closing stanza differently and what he meant by the wording of wanting to be done with non-specific passion. If passion gets you going, what keeps you going? And I've come to think it's this. It's compassion and ultimately love. For yourself, for the others you are engaged with, even for your opponents and enemies, if you can. Compassion balances passion. It gets you out of your own head. It puts you in relationship, dialogue, hopefully support with other human beings. It makes passion specific. That is what keeps you going. The perpetually impossible task, of course, is developing the self-awareness to know where I am out of balance right now, in this moment. No passion, too passive. No compassion, too frenetic, chaotic, destructive. The two in harmony? Well then, the glow and determination to make a lasting difference in someone's life or in my community. And maybe, even some grace.
Love, Lust, Sexuality, and Wisdom is the title of this worship service. And in case you thought I just came up with that as a random word generator, I thought I maybe need to explain. I did not. That's next week's sermon. That came up with a random word generator. I want to explore love, lust, sexuality, and wisdom. And you may think, well, I can see the first three. Where does the fourth, wisdom, come in? I think that is the whole purpose of our whole life's program, our sexuality education for all ages. We often think of it for children, but it's a sexuality education for all ages because it tries to bring wisdom to love, to lust, and to sexuality. And that's a powerful idea. And thank you to Chris for his wonderful reflection. And where he talked about passion and the importance and the positive elements of passion and also how it can get out of control. Whereas lust we often more think of as excessive passion that becomes distorting. And I think one of the differences I see between lust and passion is lust is about a kind of power over. It's about domination. With lust for power, lust for sex, lust for money, lust for food. And I'm not going to talk about the lust for food because I haven't quite been able to deal with that one myself yet. I still have that unhealthy love of food. Or maybe it's a healthy love of food. But being passionate in love can veer towards lust, where we tend to objectify. It's more important than anything else. In sex, we objectify the partner. In power, we strive for it at all costs, and we see that in our political system right now. And in money, it is excessive beyond what we really need to live comfortably. And today I want to specifically talk about lust in the sexual sense, because it's just fun to talk about sex from the pulpit. You don't get the chance to do it very often. Well, seriously though, I think religious attitudes towards sex have been incredibly harmful within religious communities and within our wider society as well. And we see that in our culture where so much of sex and sexuality is talked about in secret. I know my sexual education was mainly the playground and the pulpit. So, those are not the most reliable sources of information, any information, never mind information about sex. But I also think religious attitudes towards sex have been incredibly harmful to our culture, and particularly to women in our culture who have been objectified and sexualized in very, very unhealthy ways. And it has also been incredibly harmful to the lesbian, bisexual, gay, and transgender, lesbian, bisexual, gay, and trans community. And Christianity, particularly the Catholic Church, has an incredibly unhealthy attitude towards sex. And in the Hebrew scriptures, they talked about, behold, talking about Jesus, the prophecy was, behold, a virgin, though the original translation was a young woman, shall conceive and bear a son. if Jesus were going to be divine, he could not be born through a sexual act. He had to be born from a virgin because sex was unclean, sex was unhealthy, sex was immoral. And then that wasn't enough. Mary herself, when we talk about the Immaculate Conception, many people get confused and think that's about the birth of Jesus. It's actually about the birth of Mary, his mother. Even she had to be born without sex because the sexual act was somehow passing on the idea of original sin, therefore was unclean, they lacked the purity. And I'm not even going to get started on original sin, that's a whole other topic, but these unhealthy attitudes have permeated our culture to this day. We were not allowed to have sex education in school. We can't teach fact-based education in a healthy way in many schools throughout our nation. As many of you know, I came here from Texas, and the education my daughter got in Austin was good, but elsewhere in Texas it was pathetic. So this idea of sexual act and sex being seen as immoral, impure, and dirty, I think is ridiculous. The sexual act as sinful, even in a loving, consensual, committed partnership, is just a ridiculous idea. And it would be laughable if it wasn't so harmful. And that's where our OWL program is so healthy. I mean, it's not many sexual programs for children are abstinence only. Ours is abstinence recommended, but we also realize when you're trying to encourage abstinence, especially about young adults and teenagers, you're actually fighting thousands, millions of years of human evolution. And I think to not talk about it is harmful. And the idea that educating people is going to encourage it, I think is ridiculous. What we try to teach in the OWL program is we wanted everyone to be the most informed they could so they could be the teachers for their peers. Because as we know, many youth and young adults, they're not going to listen to parents, but they might listen to each other. And I know if I had been better informed, it would have helped me both with my confidence and my understanding of what was healthy and what was not. So that idea of consensual relationships and partnerships is so important and an emphasis of our OWL program. And I think because of religious silencing and the idea of sexual acts as immoral has been incredibly harmful. And that's why it's let this idea of lust become pervasive. And I think many of us would agree that our last president, President Donald Trump, was an incredibly harmful example of toxic masculinity with his attitudes towards women. And religion has often been complicit with sexism and patriarchy by promoting male superiority, institutional cover-ups, and ignoring the complaints of women. And the Reverend Dr. Rebecca Parker, one of our leading Unitarian Universalist thinkers and who was the president of Star King School for the Ministry when I was there, was abused as a child and was heartbroken when serving as a Christian minister that many of the abused women had been told to suffer just like Jesus did. No one should suffer abuse. And Reverend Barker goes on to say, Christian theology presents Jesus as a model of self-sacrificing love and persuades us, she means women and us, to believe that sexism is divinely sanctioned. We are tied to the virtue of self-sacrifice, often by hidden social threats of punishment. We keep silent about rape. We deny when we are being abused, and we allow our lives to be consumed by the trivial and by our preoccupation with others. We never claim our lives as our own. We live as though we are not present in our own bodies. Those are the words of Reverend Dr. Rebecca Parker. I remember when I was at Star King, I was in a meeting, class with 18, there was 16 women and myself and one other male colleague. And the topic of rape and abuse came up. 12 out of 16 of those women admitted to have been raped or sexually abused in their life. 12 out of 16. Me and my male colleague were shocked at that. And then we've seen with the rise of the Me Too movement how pervasive that is. And there's something about a culture that we need to shine a light in this dark area and do something about it. And I think religious community can be a place of comfort, of sanctuary and safety, and even a place of healing for all victims of abuse and injustice. And we remind everyone, and I remind each of you here today listening, that you are loved, you are worthy of love, you are deserving of love, you are valued, and you are respected. And if any of you have been struggling with these experiences, I want to let you know my door is open, but if you don't feel comfortable with me, find someone you trust that you can talk to about this. Because the Me Too movement was really powerful in 2017, and we need to keep that work going if we want this culture to change. There's still too much abuse. We had the Super Bowl last Sunday, and we know that that's the highest day for domestic violence in our culture. It's Super Bowl Sunday because of alcoholism, because of parties, because of frustration, God knows what, but it's the worst day for domestic violence. And lust is a powerful bodily emotion with an excessive desire for sex, money, or power. And of course, in the traditional religion, chastity is recommended, but I don't think chastity is enough. Lust needs to be severely tempered by love, and that's where the wisdom is. And Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said, "Power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love." Reverend King did not say this in the context of sexual abuse or rape, but I think it applies. Because to abuse or rape or harass someone must involve not recognizing that victim's humanity. And when we fail to see another's humanity, that is a spiritual crisis. And objectification is a basic and profound violation of human dignity, and consequently a profound violation of our first principle and the inherent worth and dignity of all people. Our universalist message of God's love for all means that you are loved and there's nothing you can do about it. So I invite you to say that. You're on mute, so we can't hear you. Say it loud and proud. I am loved and there's nothing I can do about it. Now say, you are loved, and there's nothing you can do about it. We are loved, and there's nothing we can do about it. Blessed be, and amen.